Oh, there I am. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Can't keep going. We need that hard data. Let's please request that funding for the Part 150 study. My next request is that you please all here at the airport, at the FAA, on the council in our towns, take threats, harassment, retaliation seriously. Okay, it is real and it is seriously. A member in our community spoke out on Facebook about the airport and was texted an anonymous text of a video of a gun. Now, all these and more are being preserved in case we do need them for legislation. Metadata is being examined. And so please take this serious. This is real. This is turned into someone's life. Please take this seriously. I was on a news segment talking about how the noise has impacted me last night. I woke up today to hate mail in my inbox. I said nothing derogatory about the airport at all. This is serious. This is real. I don't want a pilot harassed. I don't want a member of our community harassed. Let's not be dismissive like we have been dismissive about the fact that retaliation exists. Another one, for example, here, and I apologize to the children in the room for the language. This is a Reddit post, again, one of many that we have preserved. Headed to KBJC for some touch and goes this morning just to cause some more noise for these idiots. Literally all the housing to the west of the airport is no older than the 80s. These people can shut the fuck up or move. Take it seriously. I am putting in a formal request that the FAA, that this roundtable and every town president come out with a statement against harassment of anybody. No harassment of pilots, no harassment of residents. And my third request is to please also consider the children and the lead. I know that that's not our purview for today, but I would like to encourage all the representatives here to go back to their towns and ask for town-wide lead study. We have been finding positive tests of lead in our community, and to get an actual study on board, much like the Part 150, let's do a town lead study. Thank you all for your time. Thank you everybody for being here. We're all neighbors. Let's act like it. I love you all.
Thank you. So I'm going to encourage you not to clap because it just takes up time for everybody else to comment. Next on the list is Paul Miller, please.
Mr. Chair, can I make one comment?
Can we?
Just by the list there.
Paul Miller, please.
Yes, that's me.
All right, great.
I didn't have anything ready to say, but there's, a lot of this, but it's a bunch of BS, I think. I understand what pilots do. I don't understand why they don't just use a little more gas, change their flight pattern, and just let, you're letting the community suffer as opposed to letting the people that want to do touch and go suffer. So you have a choice, right? And I don't understand why they're making the community suffer as opposed to, letting a few people that want to do, touch and goes. So that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you. And next we will hear from somebody online. Robert Boutel, please. Robert Boutel.
Yes, there you go. The host finally unmuted me. So anyway, I want to thank everyone in our community for showing up. While it pains me I cannot be there physically present today, I'm proud to see so many people from our community showing up and illustrating how much this airport has negatively impacted our communities. I also want to thank the FAA for coming out to RMMA Community Noise Roundtable. I understand solutions are not always easy, so to help, I want to take a moment to reflect. How did we get here? How do we get to the point where RMMA began violating Rock Creek's navigation easement with 10 times agreed upon noise limitations set and agreed upon by the airport? How is there so much air traffic over Rock Creek that we are finding lead in our homes? What was the turning point, the catalyst that started all of this? Was it the lack of community involvement when creating the most recent airport master plan? Sworn testimony from Brian Bishop at the Rock Creek trial stated that there is no record of RMMA providing community involvement and input in the latest master plan, non-compliant with the FAA advisory circular and federal regulations. No press releases, no newspaper clippings, no flyers, nothing. The community had no input in the airport's future direction as RMMA doubled the number of flight schools over the surrounding communities. Was it the noise contour map submitted in the most recent master plan, which again, according to sworn testimony in the Rock Creek trial, used unapproved FAA methods and did not use any flight data in its modeling and creation, again, non-compliant with federal regulations, thereby downplaying the impacts to surrounding areas and causing unhampered growth? Or was it the lack of environmental review as required by the FAA and National Environmental Policy Act when the runways were strengthened? Before the runway construction on 12 left, 30 right even began, the previous airport operations manager, Brett Miller, issued a press release and was quoted in the Broomfield Enterprise on April 11, 2014, stating, "The construction will increase the runway weight-bearing capacity, which will make it easier to accommodate different types of planes." He went on to say the runway closure is meant to accommodate larger and heavier planes and that the airport plans to upgrade its other runway in 2016, referring to 12 right, 30 left. And indeed, the weight-bearing capacity of 12 right, 30 left increased from 12,000 to 47,000 pounds. Immediately after completion, there was exponential growth in airport operations over surrounding communities. So why was there no environmental review triggered as specified by the National Environmental Policy Act? The list goes on, and you begin to see, and this is the punchline, there is no single catalyst, but persistent lack of due diligence and accountability by RMMA and the FAA. Over and over again, the airport has shirked its federal regulations and proper FAA process, and now the surrounding communities are feeling the unrelenting impacts of noise and lead. So where do we go from here? I'm hoping the FAA will provide some direction, and again, I'm glad you are here, but the FAA has turned a blind eye on RMMA for far too long. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert. Next on the list, we have Noel Rowney.
Good morning. My name is Noelle. I've been in Superior for almost 19 years, and my children were born and raised here. We used to come up to this airport to watch the airplanes, and that was before they absolutely started just circling our house and making us crazy. The noise alone was enough to interfere with our daily pleasant life, and now we're finding out that we're being poisoned by the lead that's being dropped. Recently, 9 residents, my house included, were tested for lead, and the reason we did it was we wanted to know, is this really having an effect on us? If it is, we want a comprehensive lead study, which is what we asked our community to do for us. One of the windows led into my children's windows. So all these times I'm foregoing the air conditioner and asking for fresh air to come into the house, I'm finding that we're putting leaded air into our children's bodies. There's no safe level of lead, and these airplanes are circling over our playgrounds, our schools, our daycares, and they're coating our play structures with lead. And I'm not being hyperbolic here because we know that it's a positive hit, and we also know that there's no safe level of lead, and once it's in your bloodstream, you're not getting it out. And I'm very concerned about that. So we have a community noise roundtable, which I would like to know what is actually being accomplished here at this community noise roundtable. Because from what I see, the public makes a comment, and then it moves on to the agenda, and we need people to actually collect real data. So what I'm asking for the FAA is to hold the airport accountable. The master plan is out of date. They've also expanded without reassessing the master plan. And I feel like this roundtable is an optic. The 2 hours go and then it's up. And last meeting was spent on how do we better allow people to call in noise complaints. Calling in noise complaints is like asking a person who's abused to call in a complaint to their abuser, and then, oh, they're not calling it in that much, so maybe it's better. No, that's not scientific. We're asking for scientific data. That's what a noise contour map will do. So this is what we're asking for in conclusion. Collect scientific data on noise, including decibel levels. Require an update to the master plan. Address traffic patterns. Quit having them come over our homes and our schools. There have been accidents, and it's only a matter of time before an accident happens over one of our houses, and we just recovered from a fire. So imagine what's going to happen when a plane crashes over one of our houses. Quit allowing the airport to point to the FAA for, oh, the flight patterns, we have no control over this. And for those of you that are wondering, why am I talking about leaded fuel with the FAA? Because once the EPA says, yes, that leaded fuel does have an impact, then it's going to be the FAA who dictates what happens from there and bans out leaded fuel. So I do think it's appropriate, and that is why I'm bringing it up. We need to put,
No, that's your time. If you'll
okay,
please.
just don't, I think health over profits is what we need from this.
Next, on the list, I have Dana and Betsy Christensen. It looks like you crossed it off, but I just wanted to make sure. Perfect. Next on the list is David Siegel. We are 11 minutes through, so if you can keep your comments short, we can get through more people.
David Siegel, 30-year resident of Boulder. When I was a boy, I used to love to fly. I was always sad when the plane landed. My uncle had a Cessna. He used to fly me up and down the coast of South Florida, and I loved it. I still love flying. I don't mind the airport being here. I don't begrudge pilots. But in the 2 years I've been engaged with the local Flying Skies community, I've seen no ability for the pilot community, RMMA, or the FAA to engage with us realistically. What we get is what Lori said, is threats and harassment. I am asking you all to please engage with us. There are so many little steps that can be made. Every one of those little steps will make a difference. But there seems to be total resistance and only harassment, and it gets worse every single day. And that's wrong. That is just wrong. We're asking you engage with us. Show us that you want to make a difference. That's what we're asking. Thank you.
Next on the list, we have Sarah Gillard.
Yep, right here. So hi, Sarah, 12-year resident, and every day, 24/7, my neighborhood gets daily flight school traffic from this airport, and it's devastating the surrounding communities. But let's talk solutions. So first, let's address the lie that there's a pilot shortage. That is a lie that's acknowledged by the Airline Pilots Association as recently as July 8th of last year, that there is no pilot shortage, and it's the largest pilot union in the country. So no more justifying flight school traffic because there's a pilot shortage. That's just not the case. And over my house in September of last year, we had a midair collision from a flight school plane from this airport, and it almost landed on, I don't know if you guys knew this, it almost landed on 50 high school students from Niwot that were practicing outside. They're traumatized. And enough is enough. We have 10 airports in 50 miles, each dumping toxic leaded fuel onto residents and children. This airport in 2021, 2,189 pounds of leaded fuel in 1 year into our children's bodies. It's a war zone. It's sanctioned environmental poisoning by the FAA, and this is more accidents waiting to happen, maybe this time over a school instead of nearby. And finally, why are we treating flight schools as a higher priority than the residents in the surrounding community, than the safety of the community? Why are we waiting for a tragedy? So no more training over homes, period, and banning leaded fuel goes without saying. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next on the list, we have Bree Lehman.
I'm going to read from this. First, I'd like to ask everybody to consider, look around you in this room, how many people have taken time off, have taken PTO, are out of school to come today and tell you what's happening. I believe you should extend the time for public comment. We've been telling you for 2 years that 9 a.m. on a Monday is an inconvenient time for community participation. And all of these people came today to tell you what they wanted to say. And I think that you need to hear it. And I realized that you ruled last meeting that there would only be 30 minutes of public comment. but I think you should revise that given the situation. So my name is Bree Lehman. For those of you who don't know, this has been 2 years that I've been attending this meeting. I live in Lafayette, which is not in the immediate direction of any of the runways, in a town that was established before this airport, in a house that was built before this airport. Let us just establish that fact. 2 weeks ago, I attended the Noise Roundtable meeting at Centennial Airport. Among other things, I was impressed by their professionalism, the number of community representatives from groups that are affected, the attendance of FAA officials and other stakeholders, and the sheer number of community members that were in attendance to express their concerns. I see that we're matching their energy today, and I want to thank everybody who did take time out of their schedules to come, because this is extremely important. I was particularly struck by one point of the meeting where the FAA and the airport management, sitting side by side, both declared that neither had responsibility for or oversight over the issues that are plaguing our communities, such as noise, lead, and a loss of local control. So the question is, who does have responsibility for these things? Now, I've got chapter and verse here about who has what, and it's definitely the FAA in conjunction with this airport, which I will send you, but in the interest of time, we will move on to the other comments. Basically, the FAA is incentivizing airports to take steps, they're disincentivizing airports to take steps to reduce noise. They've actually have rulings that say if you think that the airport is trying to do something in the name of safety, but if it's actually for noise, shut it down. I understand why the airport wouldn't want to do anything to mitigate the noise if they're threatening their funding, because this airport and all the airports that affect us cannot exist without the handouts from the FAA, which is funded by taxpayer dollars. An anonymous flight instructor sent an email to airport management at Centennial after the meeting to offer their support in complying with the noise abatement procedures to limit their impact on the surrounding communities. But they said that even though they don't need or want to fly over their residential communities, they are instructed to do so by air traffic control, which is the FAA. I've heard the same complaint from flight schools based at this airport. So if the roundtable is convened in the interest of addressing the noise issue, why aren't the flight schools who create most of the noise that affects our communities in attendance at every meeting? Why isn't an air traffic control manager? I've heard the flight schools are concerned that they will be attacked by residents. That idea is very ironic, as I've heard. You all received the email I sent after last meeting detailing instances of pilot retaliation and harassment. That it happens cannot be denied, and doubtless there are many more instances where this occurs. The supporters of this airport and aviation in general think that we can be bullied into acquiescence. They fly over our homes enough or send enough intimidating messages on social media that we will shut down and allow them to continue to run roughshod over communities.
Bree, that's your 3 minutes if you can wrap up.
I have my last sentence.
Thank you.
I'm here to tell you that we will not. We are here because of the threat to our families, our homes, our communities. No misleading arguments about economic multipliers or freedom to fly wherever and however they want will stand in the face of the harm that is coming to our community, especially to our children, even those children whose parents are pro-aviation. It was not so long ago that the airport and our communities existed in some kind of harmony, but then you changed the rules. Rocky Mountain Metro Airport changed the rules, and we will not just stand idly by. Thank you.
Charlene Wiley.
Good morning. Thank you for this chance to speak. Can I ask how many people are online before my time?
We have 50 people online right now.
50 people, thank you. Good morning. Since 2018, this community has sought help from public officials to deal with the growing concerns around this airport. We started with local municipalities and county governments, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the EPA, the FAA, and our state and federal representatives. We've attended Jefferson County Commissioner meetings, put our concerns in writing, and called and met with commissioners individually. In the summer of 2021, at least 1,700 of us signed a petition to Jeffco commissioners pleading with them to undertake an FAA-designed master planning process that would ensure consideration of community needs in RMMA planning. Although noise is a major health concern and associated costs are well documented, I've shared that information with this body repeatedly. It is the lead in avgas that rises to the top because of its toxicity to children with lifelong health impacts. In August of 21, Dr. Sammy Zoran from CSU led a study of the blood lead levels in children living near the Reed Hillview Airport in Santa Clara, California. Reed Hillview is a GA airport similar to size and traffic patterns to RMMA. The study determined that children living near the airport had blood lead levels similar to those found in children living in Flint, Michigan, at the height of the water crisis there. We know that the issue of lead at this airport was discussed in a public meeting led by Representative Magoo's in 2019. And we know that the notion of unleaded fuels was discussed at an AAB meeting that very same year. So what has Jefferson County's response been to all of this? We can only look to changes in their operations of this airport for clues. Since 2017, there's been a total increase of overall traffic of 58%. Worse, an increase of flight school traffic of 70%. Just in the past year. By the way, that was after a group of medical professionals signed a petition pleading with Jefferson County to take immediate action on the lead contamination issue. We have the equivalent of a Flint, Michigan water crisis right here in Jefferson County, where it appears that this airport spreads up to 2,000 pounds of lead every year. Estimates for Centennial exceed 3,000 pounds. And we haven't even covered all the GA airports in the metropolitan area. I want to remind you, Jefferson County, of your duty to manage, operate, and regulate a facility that uses public funds to serve the needs of less than 1% of the population while inflicting severe harm on the rest of us.
Charlene, that's your 3 minutes. If you could please wrap up.
Okay, I have one more sentence if you'll indulge me. Santa Clara, California provides an example of how to right that wrong. They quit taking AIP grants in 2021 and initiated a ban on the sale of leaded fuels. Despite protests that would result in safety issues for pilots and devastating financial loss, that didn't happen. In fact, the FAA just announced last week a demonstration project to collect data and develop best practices for this kind of transition. I have copies with me. If any public official would like one, I'll be happy to share it. Thank you.
Next on the list, I have Darcy Campbell. Thank you. Elizabeth Heidel.
Hey, everybody, I'm Elizabeth Heidel and I live in Skystone. RMMA ops were 262,000 in 2022. The first residents of Skystone moved into their homes in 2014 when ops were 115,000. Ops have increased 127% in 8 years. RMMA has been here since 1960 and they chose the current location in the northernmost part of Jefferson County after Jeffco citizens vehemently protested and threatened to sue Jeffco if the original proposed location between 80th and 88th Street was chosen. Jeffco chose the current location for RMMA with full knowledge of the wind patterns that would require the runway to be built so that departing aircraft would be in Boulder County virtually when the wheels leave the runway. RMMA was here first when the land surrounding the airport was vacant for miles in all directions. The FAA subsidized the purchase of the land for RMMA, yet Jeffco and the FAA failed to purchase enough land to cover the airport influence area. Fast forward to 2008, when the Broomfield Planning Department requested guidance from RMMA Development Director regarding potential approval of a new residential community on land within the airport influence area. The new community is the Skystones at 108th and Sims. The development director, airport development director, recommended a navigation easement to be filed, quote, to protect the airport, the county, the developer. Nothing about residents protection, and that houses be built basically to modern building standards. The letter also mentioned that a navigation easement is the mechanism to warn a buyer of potential aircraft noise. A potential home buyer isn't notified about a navigation easement until they get the title work for closing. The horse has already left the barn. Everyone here today, including the FAA and Jeffco, the airport owner, know that a navigation easement does not alert a potential home buyer to unlimited increase in aircraft operations year after year, that a public use airport must be open 24/7, and that there's no limit to growth in operations. As the letter the airport sent to Broomfield Planning so clearly stated, an navigation easement protects the airport, the county, and the developer does nothing to protect a resident. I wouldn't be speaking to you today, as I have many times before, during the previous 24 meetings that have taken place since 2020, if an abrogation easement was the silver bullet for communicating the buyer beware message to potential home buyers. The CNR has not found a single solution that has the possibility of reducing the impact of noise from RMMA operations on surrounding communities to recommend to the FAA. The best recommendation that the CNR can make that might lead to a reduction in aircraft noise is to conduct a Part 150 study so that noise will actually be measured for the first time ever, not just modeled. So it's time, CNR, to make a recommendation to the FAA. Nothing has, you haven't come up with anything else. Why don't you measure the noise through an FAA Part 150 study, and perhaps the FAA representative here today can tell us the truth about who pays for that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 5 more minutes of public comment. Next is Kevin Wagner.
I'll pass.
Thank you. Catherine Smith.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Smith. I live in Louisville. I am new to this whole discussion, and I would just say I echo concerns about noise and lead pollution. But what's really struck me is that this has been going on for 2 years, and it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of movement. And so I urge the people who have the power to control this process to do something that's effective to address the citizens' concerns. And then I just want to say I have legal training. I try to get my arms around the structure and the rules here. I wasn't able to do that. And I think that the FAA needs to take leadership and explain to the citizens what their role is, what the structure is. And so we understand, do we need to lobby our legislators? Do we need a change in the law? What do we need to do? Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, who's the FAA representative?
Hold on. Next, we have Joshua Cooperman. Joshua Cooperman.
Who is the FAA?
Joshua Cooperman, would you like to speak?
And why don't you answer the question? He asked the
So
question.
we're not talking about, we're taking public comment.
Know
Joshua,
who the FAA represents?
I need you to, no. Joshua, would you please sit down or I'll ask you to leave. Thank you. Joshua, would you like to speak? All right, moving on. Tamara Krantz,
I think John just waited.
please come forward then.
Josh Cooperman, I live in Louisville. As we all know well, the vast majority of flights from RMMA head north over Boulder and Broomfield counties. These aircraft disproportionately deposit noise pollution, lead pollution, air pollution, and greenhouse gas emissions over these counties to the north. As I have explained previously, this is an instance of environmental discrimination. This instance is particularly egregious because those most affected residents of Boulder and Broomfield counties have no representation in RMMA's governance. The FAA has been tasked with accounting for environmental justice since at least a 1997 executive order, which has been updated twice subsequently, most significantly with the Biden administration's formation of the White House Environmental Justice Interagency Council, which includes the Secretary of Transportation. So I ask that the FAA take seriously its duty to account for environmental justice and do something about all of the pollution that is brought north from flights from RMMA.
Thank you, Joshua. Next on the list is Tamara Krantz.
Devin, Doris has mentioned she.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking my comment. I'll try to be really brief. I've lived in Louisville for 19 years, and the noise increase is just incredibly obviously noticeable. It's so noticeable that I can't sleep in the summertime with my windows open, even though we don't have air conditioning. It's so noticeable that I can't go outside to take a phone call without constant noise interruption. It's so noticeable that I can't take a walk on the meadowlark trail here in Superior and hear meadowlarks. It affects my mental and physical health, so I'm just asking you to take the actions that my neighbors are asking you to take and address the flight patterns now.
We have somebody online, Jackie Johnson.
I'm here to show my empathy and support for my fellow citizens in Boulder County and Broomfield, whose health and safety is also being put at risk. I, like you, my community in Arapahoe County has been greatly affected by the hundreds of touch and goes being flown over our homes and schools on a daily basis. We too are being harassed by training planes flying low altitudes using leaded fuel. There is no place for lead. Lead was banned 25 years ago. Why is it still being allowed? It's disgusting and an outrage. We have no rights. In August of 2021, the results of a 10-year study were published on the effects of leaded aviation fuel in children living near the Reed-Hillview Airport in Santa Clara County. The lead author said, tests show that blood lead levels of children residing near the airport were pushed upward by the deposition of leaded aviation gasoline, and that it indicates that we should support policies, efforts to limit aviation lead emissions to safeguard the welfare of our at-risk children. In October of 2022, the Environmental Protection Agency announced an endangerment finding. The EPA Administrator Michael Regan stated, when it comes to our children, the science is clear. Exposure to lead can cause irreversible, I repeat, and lifelong health effects. Aircraft that use leaded fuel are the dominant source of lead emissions to the air in this country. Today's proposal is an important step forward as we work towards to reduce the lead exposure and protect our children's health. Our homes have been turned into places have been turned into places of peace, into places of pollution and incessant noise. I watch kids walk into school under a leaded highway. They play at recess under a leaded highway with training planes doing touch and goes at 500 feet above their head. Then they walk home from school being crop dusted by lead. Over the weekend, we went to a restaurant with some friends and the hostess said, I'm sorry, the restaurant is pretty full right now. You'll have to wait for a table. It's pretty simple. Stop stuffing so many planes in the pattern. Why is this meeting at 9 o'clock on Monday morning? Why is public comment limited? Again, we have no rights. We live by an airport, but living near an airport shouldn't mean putting our health and safety at risk. We will continue to fight for our community's health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. All right, so that is the length of our 30-minute public comment period. Hold on just a second. So we have the FAA here. They have a hard stop at 10. I know that we would all like to hear from them. We asked some questions. Some of those were public comment, and we would like to hear the answers from those. If the rest of the CNR will indulge me after the FAA, we can hear the rest of the public comment because we do still have some on the list. So I would like to get our FAA since they are here. Again, they have a hard stop at 10. So Ben, we have some of the FAA online, and then we also have somebody here from the FAA in person.
Yeah, so I don't know who's planning to kick this off from the FAA, whether it's one of the people attending virtually or one of the ones in the room, but I'm going to hand it over to you guys. At the roundtable, we sent a list of questions that are attached to your agenda to the FAA that were brainstormed up by this group that we're hoping the FAA can respond to. So Justin's going to respond. So Justin, if you're online and can unmute yourself.
I am, Ben. Can you hear me okay? And can the room?
Loud and clear.
We can't hear.
Yes. There is a plane flying by.
Okay, I will stand by.
We're good. Now, you can go ahead.
Yep, you can go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, so I wanted to ensure that Leslie Lardy, who is from the Regional Administrator's Office, it looks like she might be having some trouble being heard. She was actually going to kick this off. I think she's right now as a panelist. There we go. I want to make sure.
Can you hear
me?
me?
There she is. We got you, Leslie. Go right ahead.
Okay. This is Leslie Lardy. I'm from the Regional Administrator's Office for Northwest Mountain Region. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have Justin Biasu from the Community Engagement Officer. We have Ivan Gutendaris, who's Airport's Community Engagement Officer. Joe Burt, who's with our operations group with ATO. We also have Michael Valencia, who is with air traffic. And in the room, we have John Bauer from airports. I'd like to, at this time, I would like to say that the FAA is here to provide technical expertise on operational issues and airspace procedure design. And also our airports is to provide information about airport operations. At this time, I'd like to pass this over to Joe Burt, and he can move forward with our presentation.
Go ahead, Justin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Leslie, for the introduction on behalf of the Regional Administrator's Office. As Leslie mentioned, I'm Justin Biasu. I serve as the Community Engagement Officer for the Northwest Mountain regions as well as Alaska. As Ben mentioned, there were a few questions that were asked of us, and we are here. We brought a cadre of our team from across the region. We have individuals calling in from California as well to provide answers to those. And so I'll go ahead and kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to Joseph, who will provide some answers to some of the other questions. So the first question that was asked was, what's the role of the FAA and a community noise roundtable? And so this is a bit of a detailed answer, and so I'm happy to, if there's any additional, follow-ups or anything that needs to be clarified, happy to do that. So FAA's main role is to provide be serving as a representative and participate in these meetings and to provide technical information and advice, and are not members and should not be considered members and don't vote on the roundtable recommendations. What we found is that the most productive roundtables invite FAA representatives either as regular attendees or as needed to provide. I'm getting a bit of an echo. I apologize. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
It's an airplane.
Okay. Can you hear me okay still? It's just a bit of an echo, so it's distracting. Okay. So I'll continue. So what we found is that the most productive roundtables invite FAA either as regular attendees or on a needed basis to provide a clear agenda topic with a sufficient advance notice to enable the FAA to provide and identify the appropriate representation and prepare the information that's needed. So the FAA can support roundtables in several ways. In fact, for example, the FAA Air Traffic Organization can provide technical expertise on operational issues and airspace procedural designs when requested by the roundtable. And so similarly, the Office of Airports, which is here with us today, can provide information about airport operations, airport design, grant assurances, as well as information regarding the airport role in the voluntary Part 150 compatibility program and the regional and national system of airports. So the FAA looks to the roundtable to make recommendations, ideally in coordination with the airport, that have some recognition on the impacts to the surrounding communities and reflect a thorough discussion and vetting before raising them to the applicable entity for our consideration. And so essentially what that means is it's very important that all of these recommendations which come to the FAA receive a thorough vetting and have approval from all of the members of the roundtable and been properly discussed before moving forward. So if the FAA is able to determine it can proceed with the recommendation, these reviews can take many steps and might take some time and years. And are dependent on the available resources, and the FAA can provide the roundtable with more detailed information about the process, the timetables, milestones, and where the roundtable can expect to be updated by the FAA on the environmental and, of course, the safety reviews, which are very important. So in the FAA's experience, what we found is the most effective roundtable recommendations reflect a consensus among its membership. That includes considering issues and inputs from all potentially affected communities. Consensus recommendations tend to result in long-term satisfactory solutions and often reflect the need to balance those competing interests. So how can a roundtable help? A roundtable brings together airport community and industry representatives to collaboratively identify and discuss issues of concern and possible resolutions at the time. A roundtable may elect to make recommendations, including possible changes in operations, which could address community noise or other concerns. Ideally, applicable recommendations are first coordinated through the airport, who will then, as appropriate, forward them to the applicable entities like the FAA or the airlines. And finally, a roundtable can assist and advise the FAA on community outreach or informational needs and help the FAA understand the community priorities. So our goal is to continue to have that collaborative effort throughout the process, bring our expertise to bear, and allow you to have any questions as to the purview of our agency and what it is that we can, potentially provide. So I'll now turn it over to Joseph Burt for the next question that was asked, and I will pause there. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Good morning. So I'm going to answer the next question. Can you all hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Good. All right. So the next question we have is requirements for establishing routes and moving routes. So this one, we probably need a little more clarification, but I'll just kind of talk a little bit. If you're talking about instrument flight procedures, which means like RNAV, ILS, GPS, those type of approaches, those requests will go through what we call the Information Flight Procedures Gateway. And then there's a whole process for that, which I can get into at another time. But that's kind of how the IFR, the instrument procedures, get changed. If you're talking about like the VFR, since that seems to be what most of the comments were wrapped around, the VFR routes are a little more difficult. I would just say work with the community roundtable in the airport and then come up with your recommendations. They can submit them to the FAA. The FAA can look at options, whether they would work, whether we could do that. Just know that with the tower patterns, there are some limitations. If you look in the AIM and those type of documents, there's standards for tower patterns, how to enter tower patterns, how to exit tower patterns, all that stuff. So just know there may be some restrictions there on what we can do and what we can't do. The next question is number 3 is aircraft takeoff distance and early crosswind turns be allowed. So the amount of runway or takeoff distance that an aircraft uses prior to lifting is really dependent on many factors. So 1 is the aircraft type. 2 is the load or the weight of the aircraft. Number 3 is weather, wind, obviously is part of that. And then the other one's pilot technique, right? We might have one air pilot in a Cessna 172 that can get airborne, within, 500-600 feet of the runway. You may have another one that may take 8,000-9,000 feet of the runway. It just really depends on the scenario and the pilot. Reference the crosswind turns, the early crosswind turns. Again, this is kind of a standard, but some factors that apply to crosswind turns, in addition to the ones I listed above, would be conflicting traffic, departure direction. In other words, which way they're departing the runway. Are they going to the east, the west, whatever, north, south? For safety of flight, standard guidance for pilots is to start their crosswind turn when they're normally beyond the departure end of the runway and within about 300 feet of whatever the tower pattern altitude is. Early crosswind turns are allowable in some instances. However, they must be communicated in advance, and the controller and pilot must basically be in agreement. A pilot can refuse an early turn or delay a turn due to safety of flight. And then just for you all's knowledge, we really don't like using early turn crosswind turns as a standard practice. It's only when a certain situation or something like that arises. And then the last one that I'll cover, and Justin may jump in at the end once I'm done, because he is the noise ombudsman, but noise complaints. So how we process these. So I will tell you how it works with the noise complaints that we get, and then Justin will jump in on some, and Leslie may as well at the end. What happens is they get put into the noise, what we call the noise portal, which is aircraft noise complaint and inquiry system. And that gets put into the portal. So if you call saying there's a low flying Cessna circling my house at 2:00 in the morning, I don't understand what's going on, blah, blah, blah. So that will get put in the portal. It will get sent to us. And what my folks do is we do a deep analysis. We pull the radar track, we find out what they're doing, we find out the altitudes. Usually we'll put a certain distance around the location provided, whether it's an address or cross street. We'll do a thorough investigation, and then we usually will try to type up something to explain what's going on, and those type of things. Again, we look at altitude. If we feel that the altitude is below what they should be at or below what the standard is for the area, whether it's 1,000, 2,000, whatever, we don't get into that. That's not our role. So what we'll do is we'll collect all the data. We'll do, and then we'll send that to flight standards, they're the ones that work the low flying aircraft things, and then they will do their research and determine whether there was a violation of any sort. My folks we don't get involved on that side of the house with the violation stuff. That's all flight standards. So all we do is the analysis. And if we think that they're below what the altitude they should have been at, then we'll forward that to flight standards. And that's all I have. Justin, did you want to add anything?
Yes, the only thing that I would add is in an effort to ensure that whenever we receive noise complaints, that there isn't the finger pointing, essentially, that the airport is sending you to the FAA is sending you back. We established a few years ago it's a partnership in the noise complaint initiative that any area outside of a certain radius, the airport would work on providing a response to you, and anything beyond that, the FAA will. With conversations with the airport, they elected to go with about 5 miles in the radius to handle some of those complaints, as they understand the noise concerns in that area better than we do. But certainly if there's anything beyond that space, and of course, as Joseph mentioned, we're able to provide all of the research that's needed, all of the data if needed and requested by the airport on any particular things outside of that space. And so we found that it allows for you, the members of the public, members of the roundtable, if there are questions, if there are concerns, that there is a one place that they're set to go, and that if anything is beyond that, they can certainly reach out to us. But we want to make sure that the answers that you receive are also consistent with the answers that are being given to you by the airport. We want to also that's a very important component of this, because our goal is to ensure that the information that's needed is received by those that are providing those complaints. So that's all I'll add, and see if there's anything additionally that maybe Leslie may want to mention. And then if not, we can transition over to our colleagues over in the Office of Airports who can answer some of the additional questions.
Justin, I'd like to throw in one more thing. We do have the link or a hyperlink address to the complaint system or the noise portal. If you guys want that, we will send that to the roundtable chair, and the roundtable chair can disseminate that, because I don't want you guys having to scramble to write it down. But we'll make sure that link gets sent to the roundtable chair, and then they can pass it as appropriate.
And this is Leslie. Justin, I have nothing else to add. You covered that really well. So we can pass it over to airports if Joe and yourself are done.
That's me. I'm the FAA representative. Stand up, please. I was trying to wave to you earlier, but you had your head down. Appreciate that. Someone cares about what we have. No, so just a little background, just so you know, we're all human, right? I grew up in Arvada, born and raised, went to Colorado State University. A lot of the houses as a civil engineer in the area right around the airport. My first flight ever in a private aircraft was out of Rocky Mountain Metro when I was 6 years old. It was a V-tail Bonanza, flying with one of the greatest men I ever knew, and it generated my interest in aviation. So I'm with the Office of Airports. We handle airport development. So we do grant names for the runway projects, acquiring land at the airport. We deal with a lot of those types of things. So what I'm here to address is, how do you fund the Part 150 thing? That's what our office does. We fund those types of things. So the way that process works, the airport can come to us and request funding for that. They have a certain amount of too far into the weeds as far as the different types of funding, but there's entitlement dollars that they get. But understand there's a planning process that goes with that. So we have a very comprehensive 5-year plan with all of our airports. We oversee 117 airports in 3 states. So
we have a very comprehensive 5-year plan of how they are going to structure and spend that. What do they want for airport development? So if they come to us and say, we want to fund a Part 150 study, we say, where does that fit into your plan? And we need to understand costs. Relatively expensive, obviously. I want to make sure one thing is clear. We don't measure, we model. Even in a Part 150 study, it's modeled. So all the work we've done with Centennial Airport and their noise roundtable and the airport in their past Part 150 studies, it's modeled. So I do have our environmental expert with me here. So if you see her pick me, it means I've said something wrong. So
What if the airport does not want to fund the study?
I mean, there are avenues to fund it outside of the agency, but we would be a partner in that because it is run out of the agency as far as the standards that go with it, how it's done, the mapping that is done. The local communities could raise the money and ask for it to be funded. I mean,
Wait, hold on. So public, please.
Did nothing with that study.
So, excuse me, please, no more comments, okay? This is a presentation of the FAA and the board has a conversation. We will get back to public comment.
so that's where the funding comes in. Now, what restrictions, the other question was what restrictions can be put in place? So first and foremost, you need to establish a Part 150 to understand what that looks like. What do the maps look like? What are the noise frontiers? Where are the impacted areas? And then you would bring forward what's called a Part 161 study, which is where you would propose mitigation to those areas that are impacted by noise. And then the agency would consider those in conjunction with the Part 150 data that was gathered to see if something was needed in that area or what to do. Those are the two questions that the Office of Airports was asked to address.
Great. And
Right.
are you teeing it back up to someone online for the remainder of the
Yeah, I
presentation?
mean, if we've got more questions that the board would like to hear answered, or if the board has questions for us.
Great. Thank you. Leslie, do you have more questions to answer in terms of the presentation? Or are you ready for roundtable questions?
I'll go ahead and answer for Leslie. I don't believe that there are additional questions that our respective offices were sent, so we're happy to take a few questions with the time we have
Great.
remaining.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner or Councilmember Baker, you have your hand up.
Well, yes, I did, because I had a specific question for Joe when he talked about his 5-year plan. It's my understanding.
I'm John.
John, sorry. Joe was Bert, the guy with the. You said you had specific 5-year plans for like 50 airports in your region, right?
We have 117 airports in my 3 states that I'm responsible for. And the airport has a comprehensive 5-year plan that they coordinate with, not only my office, but the state airport.
Well, it's my understanding from what I've heard on our roundtable is that RMMA hasn't had a master plan since 2011. So I was wondering, what is your plan for this?
So don't confuse the master plan with a capital improvement, 2 separate things. So that 5-year comprehensive plan is a capital improvement plan. And a lot of that information is derived from previously conducted master plans. But the airport continues to grow and they continue to adapt those capital improvement plans. Every so often they update it and say, hey, in year 6, this is what we're spending on funding.
I guess that just doesn't make any sense to me how the 2 plans wouldn't really coordinate with each other.
They do in large part, but the master plan is a foundation. And they're typically updated every 10 to 15 years. We would see somebody say, hey, we want to update a master plan study. It's not a mandate, but it's something that they could absolutely request from us. We probably wouldn't update it any more frequently than that, just because you're constantly in a planning cycle of that.
Okay, I'll just ask one more question. I'll let my colleagues ask. Plans change and we close down airports. I mean, Stapleton, the major airport in the entire state and a major airport in the whole region, was moved because of noise and safety reasons. So no airport has a unlimited lifespan to it. So where do we talk about the lifespans of an airport? Because even though the original planners may not have envisioned it, growth happens, life happens. And, I mean, really, Laurie was a major military airport and it was closed down. And I know that there was an airport in the south of Jefferson County 50, 60 years ago, Columbine, it was closed down. So when do we talk about the lifespan of an airport in really relation to the community around it?
So from a grant assurance perspective, you gotta understand. So first and foremost, we have grant assurances. When the county accepts a grant from us, they agree to certain contractual obligations. And one of those is that they'll continue to maintain that airport as an operating airport for access. So we have no, and with that, I heard somebody mention the 20-year, we stop accepting FAA grants, therefore we can close the airport for 20 years. That is not the case. In many airports, such as Rocky Mountain Metro, they have purchased land using federal dollars. Those grant assurances never expire. They run in perpetuity with the land. So those grant assurances remain in place. As in regards to Stapleton, Stapleton was closed because of various number of issues. And one of the biggest was capacity. So you couldn't put more aircraft into that airport with its current land, its landlocked. So they relocated it to actually increase capacity at a new facility. So it wasn't closed because of noise concerns. It was closed because of an impact that it had on a national airspace system when that airport was inundated with traffic. So that was the creation of Denver International. So yes, Stapleton was closed because you didn't need two major airports right next to each other.
Thank you, John. We have Commissioner Stoltzman and then Trustee Sorbo.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone who's here today for taking time this morning and thank the FAA as well. So I don't think we'll be able to get to everybody's questions today. So who is the best contact to email our questions to get a response to them? Is it to you?
Sure, I can answer that if it would be helpful. Leslie Lardy, who's the senior advisor for the regional administrator, would be your best point of contact. And of course, Ben and I are in direct contact as well. So certainly the two of us could serve as a point of contact if the roundtable has additional questions that we aren't able to get to today. We also understood that there were some that you all came in advance that you wanted us to answer. So hope we got to those.
Thank you very much. If you can provide your contact information to the chair so that we can get that and copy everybody, that would be helpful, I think. And then I heard you say, Justin, that the group can request the FAA comes to our meetings. So I think we would like that. And it seems like that would be great. So we're making that request. And then just, the last point, you talked several times about consensus of the noise roundtable, then sending that on to the airport and then having the airport submit that to the FAA. Could you just define consensus for me? Different groups define it differently. So does that mean everybody in the roundtable 100% unanimous, or is that a majority position? Just if you could describe that for me. And is that a requirement of the FAA?
It is. It's an important one because, and yes, to answer your question, a consensus would require all of the members of the roundtable be in concurrence with that. The reason why is, let's say, for example, if there was a change to flight procedures or a recommended change, you wouldn't want one of the communities to end up saying that procedure is going to affect them and they wouldn't necessarily be in concurrence with it. So we really want to ensure that all of the individuals are at the table and having the opportunity to provide their,
So thank you for explaining that's a requirement. What feels hard from where I sit is that we haven't been at the table to decide these routes that are in existence today. Like there's been a change so that more traffic is flying over Boulder County communities, and we haven't been afforded that consensus to take this impact that's on us today. So now to change it, you're saying we have to get 100% consensus, but we've not agreed to this in the first place. So that feels very hard, just so you know.
Trustee Serba.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate the turnout today. Fantastic. John, thank you for coming and speaking. My question for the FAA is kind of 2-point. This is a community roundtable for noise, and I understand that is the genesis of it. But lead is becoming an issue with a lot of people and a lot of concerns in my residence of Superior. Does the FAA have any future plans to work with the Environmental Protection Agency in reducing the emissions of the planes, or more importantly, going to unleaded fuels? Decades ago, the EPA mandated that no more we're going to use leaded fuels for automobiles, and that's made it a lot safer for everybody. But the aviation industry has always lagged behind that. Is the FAA taking any steps forward? Because I think, this is a salient point that everybody needs to get behind, specifically the FAA and the EPA together with the airport. Because if we can get ahead of this issue before it becomes a health issue or even worse, a health crisis going forward, I think that would benefit everybody in the community.
Yeah, appreciate your comments, Trustee. Leslie, do you have any broader agency perspective? One reason I ask Leslie is I know it's complicated, but you hear flight standards, you'll hear air traffic, you'll hear airports, you hear all these portions of the FAA. We all do something a little bit different as the agency. So Leslie kind of represents all of us, and she may know that there's a more common ground.
No, great. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, so just so y'all know, I've been having audio issues, so I'm listening on my cell phone and talking to you on my computer. We do have a program that's called Eagle, and we work with industry around the country to eliminate aviation leaded fuel by 2030. We do have a representative, and I just sent the information to Ben Miller to invite Robert Oshlingers to your roundtable so he could give you all the up-to-date information on what the FAA plus the partners with industry and aviation professionals are doing for this program. So I would defer to Ben to reach out to Robert to have him come and talk to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. It is past 10 o'clock now. I heard that you all had a hard stop, so I want to be respectful of your time. I do believe that we have some more questions that we provided, as well as we have some questions that came up in our public comment today. As Commissioner Stoltzman has indicated, we would love to have you all back at a future meeting. So we'll work with our airport to schedule that future meeting.
I just want to at every meeting.
Understood, Mr. Chairman. And yes, if there were any particular questions that were asked of us to date that weren't answered, that were sent in advance, is there anyone that might be able to send those back to us? I'm pretty sure that we answered all of them that were sent, but we're happy to coordinate afterwards. But thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Thank you, John. Thank you. All right, so roundtable, we had a number of public comment that did not get to speak. I turn to you all. And can we mute that? Perhaps it's somebody else's computer.
I'll see the one who's not on.
It's not me. All right, we had a number of public comment that didn't get to speak. Would we like to hear from them?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a move. I'll move that we hear the public comment that's here today, and anyone who's here to make public comment be allowed to do so.
Excellent.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That's unanimous. So, yes.
I think it would be helpful to point out in 5B, the new meeting times and dates.
Yes, of course. Let me just touch on that real quick. Just so for the public's awareness, as Councilmember Baker indicated, we will be moving upon the roundtable's confirmation, we will be moving to the first Thursday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. So our next meeting would be March 2nd. Of course, we'll get to that item after the remainder of the public comment to confirm that. So at this point, we will have Ricky Dominic. Did I say that right? Ricky? Not here. Michelle?
Michelle Kazarek?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Kazarek. I live at 2788 Slate Court in Rock Creek on the other side of the hill. I am an avid supporter of flight and the airport when it does not overstep the boundaries that we've heard from everybody. I am part of a volunteer on the Advisory Committee for Environmental Sustainability in Superior. And on January 24th, 2022, the Town Board of Trustees approved our Sustainability Action Plan. This dynamic, adaptable plan was developed by town staff and the Advisory Committee for Environmental Sustainability in collaboration with dozens of community partners. Our Sustainability Action Plan has air quality as one of the key pillars. One of the strategies is to improve outdoor air quality, ozone, particulate matter through local and state action. We have 3 actions that are part of this discussion. Action A21, engage in regional conversations and planning efforts with local governments, regional planning organizations like this, nonprofits with similar air quality monitoring, messaging, and mitigation goals. A2.2 goals for strategy action, pursue policies that will reduce ozone precursors and particulate matter by joining local government coalitions to support strong regulation of sources of Environmental Protection Agency criteria for air pollutants, hazardous air pollutants like lead, and greenhouse gases before the Air Quality Control Commission. And Action 3, support studies with impacts on our air quality from regional activities such as oil and gas development in neighboring counties through partnerships. So I implore you to listen to the board members and the people that have attended here to help us conduct those studies ASAP. We can't wait 5 years. Thank you. Thank you.
Next on the list is Clay James.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Brad Walker.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Walker. I live in Superior, Colorado. Position, I'm a pilot, flies out of Rocky Mountain Metro Airport. Also, I represent the general aviation interest of the national organization, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. I've attended every meeting of the Community Noise Roundtable since it started. It looks to me like we have a nice turnout today. My neighbors in the audience. I would assume such a large turnout is because everyone wants to vent their frustrations. So for that, I apologize. This continues to represent the lack of leadership by various members of this board towards educating their constituents as well as themselves in regards to FAA law, rules, and regulations. For example, last month's meeting, a representative from Boulder County expressly advocated for the airport to take large parcels of land and repurpose it as open space. This would be a glaring violation of the federal grant assurances every airport in the country has to adhere to. The airport director knows this as well as the FAA and would never allow such things. But it's a shining example of how certain members of this board do not care about federal law, but rather using simple politics to unlawfully curtail operations at the airport. Quick talk about lead and aviation fuel, as this seems to be the windmill that my neighbors want to tilt at. Everyone agrees lead needs to be removed from aviation fuel. The industry is committed to getting the lead out, and this is beginning to happen. But my neighbors want to use this issue to destroy the economic vitality of this airport and reduce operations at the airport. You wanted to say something?
Nope. Okay. Thanks.
So much so, the town of Superior has an action item to investigate and push for the removal of lead fuel. The FAA took a little bit of a moment to talk about that, but to explain that to you, Mr. Serbu, but I would remind you that AOPA has lawsuits against Santa Clara County as well as Reed Hillview Airport concerning leaded fuel.
and the town of Superior would not invite another lawsuit, I assure you of that. But there are technical issues that are related to this that must be addressed first, and for that, this board has no authority to talk about lead. Its purview is simply noise. So I respect the fact that everyone wants to get lead out of the fuel, but this is not the proper avenue to do that. I hope that we can get back to dealing with the noise issue and less playing politics with the community. Otherwise, we'll spend another 2 years accomplishing little, as we've done for the last 2 years. Respectfully myself. Have a good day.
Thank you, Brett. Next on the list, we have Audra Dubler.
Don't go for the P150 study because they won't do anything when they get it. Hi, I am Audra Dubler out of Greenwood Village, Colorado. I stand here before you as a resident of Greenwood Village, one that gets touch and go activity from Rocky Mountain Municipal. When it's too full to fly up here, they come down and harass me. My son's being poisoned by your leaded fuel plane, and wipe that smirk off your face. It's sick.
Yeah.
He's a developing brain at risk, a person who is in the middle of the touch and go activity. And these flight school planes were not here 2 years ago. Somebody sold us out. I moved to Colorado to enjoy Colorado. This was not here 2 years ago. I demand that this community and my community demand to know who sold out Colorado to flight schools from Florida, Texas, Delaware. Now we need to know. Touch and go activity does not belong in a metropolitan community. To top it off with leaded gasoline. Major airlines have the money to take it, go all the way out there, build a runway, touch and go to their heart's freaking content. I couldn't care. But I know where your heads are. We're working towards moving leaded gasoline 5 to 10 years. My child will have brain damage by then. Did you know the Reed Hillview children have brain damage? IQs of 90. That's right above Down syndrome. We should be pissed. Ban leaded fuel. Who's Tracy Farr, by the way?
Yes.
Did you say that banning leaded fuel would be bad for business?
Actually,
That's a quote. Are you joking? You don't have a child living under this, do you? That's my concern. We are asking this airport authority, this noise roundtable, to work collaboratively with Joe Nagoose, Jason Crow, John Hickenlooper. We're asking our elected officials to be on the right side of public health and safety. Save my son Noah. Save my family's safety. My community. We deserve more. And noise is a big deal. How come they don't use noise? It's increasing stress. I'm in constant fight or flight mode. High blood pressure, hearing loss, productivity. At the end of a day, this is my life. This was just 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours of touch and go activity right over my home. My ears are ringing.
Every day.
My ears ring. Not to mention, for pilots, retaliation. You want to hear it? On a Facebook national page, my address and my name were posted because I'm fighting you to get rid of you. Flight schools need to go. The next day, a safety alert was put on my phone like someone was following me. Bring it is what I say. Someone else told me I'm too poor to have a plane. You're right. The elite are making this on all of our backs. I am. I don't have a plane. And then I fly over Greenwood Village. I'm going to rev my RPMs and fly a little lower. LOL. It's a sick industry. General aviation sucks. My cousin is a real pilot, a real Air Force pilot, and he thinks you guys suck.
Next on the list is Jim Howe. Jim?
Oh, I'll pass.
Well, no. I mean, I guess we're all here because we really want some common sense solutions. And, you know, I think somebody made it earlier. You've got open space, it's what, 3 miles to 93? How much is that gonna cost you extra? How much time extra is it gonna take to just mitigate some of this? I mean, Jesus, how easy is that? But it doesn't sound like anything's gonna happen because we have to go to committee. And the committee gets to make that decision whether or not to even measure it. And then you just model it, you don't actually measure the.
Measure it.
Yeah, come measure it. I mean, I guess as a community, we should pay for the decibel measurement of these airplanes. And I think, with Sarah, you engaged the study that was going on, or
Private residents.
private residents did it. So I guess it's up to Superior to keep on pushing back on this. So it doesn't seem like we're getting any cooperation. You know, your heat maps and those flight patterns are just insane. Like, been here, what, 10 years? I don't even mind it. I never did. 2 years goes by, like somebody said, I can't even walk outside to have a business phone call. When, you know, during the pandemic, when my kids were home, screaming, I'm trying to make a living, and you get, you know, these little mosquitoes or mopeds with wings. I mean, it's just insane. In fact, that they can't go 3 miles down over open space and help out is ridiculous.
Thank you, Tim. Next on the list is Dustin, and I believe it's Clymer.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
All right, so I'm gonna take a little bit different track here. You know, I came to say, we've been, you know, trying to work with this airport. I'm here with my dad. He stays with me. He's recovering from cancer, diabetes, amputation. And just like they were saying, they're buzzing our house on purpose. Look at what this causes. So I'm gonna tell you this, I'm gonna take a different track. Okay, he mentioned the lifespan of an airport. I'm done with this airport. It's time to talk about closing RMMA airport. I've started a Facebook page, Close RMMA. Very easy, where we need to start taking all your information, any of this bullshit these guys are saying, and they're really talking smack to ladies. I'm done with that. You want to talk smack about the airport, you talk to me, you understand? We're gonna start getting all this information together, and the 99%, it's not going to overtake the 1%. We can get a lot of community impact out of this space by doing something else with it, because this is just a pig trough and it needs to close. I'm done with it.
Thanks. Next we have written down is Laura Page.
So I'm new to these meetings, but what I'm hearing here is just pass the buck, pass the buck, pass the buck, pass the buck.
Yep.
I don't really understand this process. So I would like to ask, because my understanding is it's been 2 years and really nothing effectively is done. I'm hearing that the airport isn't even involved. Can you please tell the public how we reach the goal of reduced noise? Because I don't understand this process.
All right, Roundtable, we have 3 people. Hold on just a second.
I would appreciate that.
Roundtable, we have 3 people that have signed up to comment online. Would you like to hear from them and then cut off comment after these 3? Yes? Okay, perfect. So Heather Hansen. Heather Hansen, can you hear us?
Hear me.
Yes, we got you.
Thanks for taking the time to listen. I'll keep it short so we can get back to some of those practical answers. I live in the Indian Peaks neighborhood in Lafayette, and along with thousands of my neighbors, we are under siege daily. I think up to this point, we've been seen as disruptors who want complete quiet. That's just not true. I lived for several years very close to a U.S. Air Force base, and that was peace compared to this. I appreciate the concerns of my neighbors, particularly in regard to the physiological effects of this increased air traffic, noise pollution does scientifically verifiable damage, especially to children. One woman, one of my neighbors in the audience there, talked about the constant fight or flight, the increase in heart rate and stress. That is scientifically verifiable. I'm happy to pass on to the committee that information. All we're asking for is for some balance to be restored. And we're putting that in your hands. Balance. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. So the only other person that signed up was somebody that wanted to speak again. So according to our rules, they are invited to speak at the next meeting or send an email for further comments. So that is all the public comment that I have signed up. Is there anyone else wanting to speak today? You may come forward. And please state your name and your jurisdiction, please.
So, my name is Danielle. I live right here in Rock Creek.
You're welcome to come forward just so that we can, otherwise people online won't be able to hear you.
Yes, so my name is Danielle Davis. I live right here in Rock Creek. I'm here today as a mom. And I know that, you know, we have those among us who say that this is not the appropriate forum to come and talk about lead poisoning. I don't know what is. Every time I try to dig in to figure out what avenues do I have to create positive change to protect my children, it's this. It's this.
Yeah.
Nobody has responsibility. No, don't talk to us. I'm desperate and I don't know where to go. I get it. Maybe this isn't the forum. I don't understand their comments online about don't come and make a fool of yourself and present that you don't want lead over your family's, you know, space. I get it, but why not? Where do we go? Help us. Help us. I don't know what to do anymore. The noise is so far secondary. Yes, it's ruining my enjoyment of my home, but to feel like there is a physical threat against my children day in and day out, that's when I hear the planes, all I think is lead poisoning, lead poisoning, lead poisoning. I'm desperate. I'm desperate. So, and I feel like those who sit by and whether it's monetary gain for the airport or you just want to roll your eyes at us, this shouldn't be something that we're divided about. Honestly, this shouldn't be something that we're divided about. I understand why people are as frustrated that they want to shut down the airport, but I think that comes from a place of frustration, of not feeling heard, of not feeling like someone's working with us. And again, I don't know where to turn to get the help to help my family. And I think that, again, this is something that we should all join over. I think even you as a pilot, I don't think that you go home at night and you're like, haha, I'm poisoning small children. I hope not, or that, the airport is making enough financial gain that it's worth poisoning our communities. How can that be the case? History will not look positively on what we did in aviation to surrounding communities. So I guess we're pleading and pleading and pleading that I know that everyone wants to say, well, it's not our responsibility, we don't have control. Pull out the pocket mirrors and say, what is it that I can do tomorrow that could help save these communities surrounding the airport from lead poisoning?
Phil, please state your name and your jurisdiction.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Ryan. I live in Superior in South Rock Creek. Three things for the FAA representatives. Hopefully they're still listening, or at least for the purpose of the notes. Please consider this an invitation by the community in Superior to come to Superior, go to Louisville, come to the communities, directly engage with them. You don't need to be invited by the airport roundtable. The communities are engaging you. Please give us more than 25 minutes. Number two, I enjoy the noise because all of us that are disrupted every day are disrupted by noise. So feel free to chat with your neighbors as I talk. Number two, while I do appreciate there is some voluntary noise mitigation strategy, the way it's been implemented here at Rocky Mountain just is not sufficient. You have a sign. Demonstrate to us that you're out training the flight schools. Do what Boulder has done, which is there's a major landing page on the Boulder website that talks about the strategies, how they can mitigate the noise. Pilots at Boulder are engaging other pilots saying, hey, I saw you over this neighborhood. We want to be good neighbors. Please don't do so. All this is documented in the daily camera. Do more, please, with a voluntary noise mitigation strategy. Number three, I was a trustee a few years ago. We set up this roundtable, which was a first step. I'm disappointed that 2.5 years later, literally nothing has been done. Nothing has been done. So as it comes to the flight schools, one of the things that I've been advocating for, and it's on the agenda, but we keep kicking the can down, is landing fees. I don't understand why there is not a nominal landing. If somebody takes off here and lands and it's $6, that's not going to impact the $100 or whatever it costs to rent a plane for an hour. But if they do 10 touch and goes in that 55-minute training, that's another $60. Guess what? Let's have the economics work through this. Try it out. See if it works. I understand that the resident pilots that are here will not want to pay for the touch and goes. If you're a private airport owner or airplane owner and you're here in town, fine. I think you should try it out and they should be exempt from those $6 fees. The problem are the flight schools. Let's try out an economic solution with a nominal landing fee. We don't need the FAA's approval. You guys could do it. Try it out for 6 months, see if it works, study the noise. Thank you.
I'm Mike Hiller from Superior. I've been here about 6.5 years. I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I had this nice opportunity, so I guess I will. We moved here about 6.5 years ago, mainly to find somewhere nice and safe. Our oldest daughter was killed by a guy high on meth and kind of bad, so we got out of that state and moved up here. I have a daughter in Arvada, and so we thought this was such a really nice area. And it was pretty nice for the first few years, and this has gotten louder and kind of worse, and we've talked about moving. We talk about it all the time. Should we move? Should we move? And of course, I've got really young kids, and it's hard to believe. I've got old kids too, so that's like reasonable, but some 3 young kids too, so I'm effort number 2 here. But it's gotten to the point, I live right behind Eldorado Arcade School, and I watch the planes fly right over the playground with the kids on this playground. The least passes over the school that I've seen is about 29 an hour. I used to calculate it too depressing. And just over the school, I see these kids playing out there, and then over and over and over. And I think my initial biggest concern was the noise. And I've been actually terrible. One reason I've been putting off getting hearing aids is it'll make it worse, I think. So I'm kind of looking at, the state of not being aware sometimes. But of course, my wife says I got to get those pretty soon, so I'm gonna probably have to do that. But I think I think now, if I think about it, that's highly annoying, and it is hard to have conversations. And we keep all of our windows shut. The last 3 years, we've not opened a single window, which is kind of sad. I live in Colorado, all your windows shut. We've even talked about getting new windows that are tighter than our old standard, windows that came in that. I don't know if that would even help, but I think now I'm thinking more about the lead and stuff. And I drive by Rocky Flats, completely open. There's like nobody over there. I'm not saying that's, great, but it just, taking detour over 93, Rocky Flats versus over Eldorado Arcade School. I mean, it's being done over a neighborhood is bad enough. But right over the school, repeatedly, at fairly low altitudes, I can't estimate what that is, but it's, I can't throw a rock there, but it seems really low to me. I can identify planes really clearly. And I used to call in the noise hotline, and I did it. I just kind of gave up doing it. It's kind of, it didn't seem like anything was happening. And so if there's fewer calls, it may be frustrated people that just don't go anywhere. I have no problem with the airport, really. I don't mind the big planes coming in. I don't mind it. It's the trainers. It's that repetitive. There's that green one again. There's that white one again. And there's that green guy again. And it's just over and over and over. It's just so intense. And it's really kind of impacted what we hope to find out here. It really has. It went from thinking, oh, thank God I'm out of Albuquerque. I shouldn't have said that. Thank goodness I'm out of Albuquerque, or it's so dangerous. And I thought, God, this is so great. This is like a little oasis, and it's just gotten kind of tainted over time. It doesn't feel as nice as it used to, but that's I guess that's it.
Thank you. Yep, I'm ready. We got one and then we'll shoot you, okay?
I'm Bridget Widener. I live in South Rock Creek, and I wasn't planning to speak because of fear of retaliation that some of my community members have dealt with. I don't talk very well. But if I don't speak, who's going to protect my kids? Because it's evident no one here really gives a shit. We don't want lead talked about, but I am a parent of a neurodivergent kid who is very affected by lead and other heavy metals. So this matters. And I moved here 6 years ago, and I actually had a neighbor sell their house across the street from me about 3 years ago because of the noise. And I used to think she's crazy. But fast forward 6-8 months, and now I'm considering selling my house, but interest rates are too high. And why should I have to move to satisfy some pilots in the high school? I shouldn't have to move. I moved to Superior and Rock Creek in particular because of the schools, because of the community, because of how many kids live in Rock Creek and they are being poisoned every day. It's science. And I know a lot of people don't believe in science anymore, but I do. So the science, there's study after study after study. It affects our kids. And the noise does too. And, you know, it used to not be bad, but it is now. And there are things we can do. Why can't we work together? Why can't we hold people accountable? It's simple, common sense stuff. Please stop smirking at me, please.
Hello, everybody. Again, thanks for coming. I'm George Backus from Skystone. I've spent 50 years in science, so I resonate with this. And that career has been largely associated with computer modeling. But being in science, it's also always associated with measurable evidence and the assumption, being biased in science, that that's how we make decisions, with measurable evidence. And so my career has been from Apollo 13 through nuclear reactor safety to terrorism and climate change. And for all of that modeling, it's considered meaningless unless it's backed up by data, that it's always compared with data. So in my world, whenever I would do modeling and I would somehow imagine an environment, what I call high consequence environment, if I did not, and I think what we're talking about here compares, if I did not always take my models and have them compared to real data, it was considered criminal. And so I sort of think that responsibility requires, and so I was really surprised at the 150. I breezed through it too fast, but always to have data, and modeling merely tells you when you really need to know the data. Yes. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm Tim Martin. I also live in Rock Creek. And actually, the more I hear about this, I think actually more the sound committee, this committee has the most power, because the FAA is saying we can't do anything, we just advise. And everybody's, as everybody said, everybody's pointing fingers. Everybody I'm hearing here earnestly says, hey, I don't really mind the airport. Except I think the more that we aren't going to go away, this is tied to two of the most important things: our health and our property values, which is our generational wealth, which is tied back to one thing, which is our kids. But what I'm seeing is the most practical way that this can come to resolution is first steps is through education and through working with us in the sound community. Because you guys can right now make a huge impact on everybody's life. We're not going to be going away. It's just going to keep escalating and escalating. Not because we're NIMBYs or anything like that. We knew the airport was here. It's not like it's not our backyard. We just want you guys to hear us, and you want to work with us, and educate your pilots. Try and find a way to mitigate the sound. And I think the solution is right here in front of us. Otherwise, it's just people are gonna get more radicalized. You're hearing people saying, let's shut down the airport. I'm cool with that if the airport's not gonna work for them. The answer's right in front of us. So thank you for your time and, yeah.
Thank you, Tim. All right, anybody else? Come forward.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear everybody today. My name's Bill Bariah, Broomfield. I called in 4 times to the noise roundtable for the noise line. And I asked for a call back each time. And it took 4 times before I got a call back, 4 times. And when I got a call back, I got the runaround that it was the FAA or it was the airport that I had to get permission from the FAA to do anything. Same thing that everybody's saying, nothing's happening. The other thing I talked about with this person was the unleaded gas versus the leaded gas. You know what he told me? He told me that the reason you don't have unleaded gas out here is because you don't have a distributor. You know what? You need to create the demand to have a distributor. These oil companies will do it if you create the demand. If you don't create the demand, you're not going to have a distributor. Make sure that in your next meetings, you talk about the demand, because these pilots out here don't want to do it because they don't want to have to change their engines, don't want to have to spend any money. Hey, follow the money. That's what it's all about. Create the demand, you'll get the unleaded gas, you'll create that problem will be solved. Make sure, though, you create the demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Maxine, we'll get to you in just a moment. I have two people online. We'll hear from these 2 people and then we'll close public comments. Lynn Mitten.
Hi, my name is Lynn Mitten. I live in Rock Creek North. I moved here in 2004 for the schools. My son has autism. It's a great community, but about 3 years ago, that's when I really noticed the noise, and some things happened. I think the people in the audience will agree with me. Like, it has changed over the last 4 or 5 years. And so, you know, people who have autism, sensitive to noise, I mean, definitely the lead issue, but the noise, it is very stressful, and it's stressful even for me, especially because I work at home and it's incessant. One morning from 6 to 7 a.m., I counted 30 planes. 30, that's every 2 minutes. So I think that the airport, and I also feel like us as the community, we are sustaining all of the burdens and none of the benefits of this airport. I don't understand why it's changed. It seems like from the comment, it has to do with the flight training schools. And maybe that's why, because the airport is getting money from the flight training schools. That does not have the interest of the community in mind. And I really think that we just need to go back to how it was 5 or 10 years ago and reduce this flight traffic, because it's a real problem. And I agree with all the other people who have commented that this is going to escalate. Look at the turnout here. This is an issue. We're here on a weekday, on a Monday morning, because this is affecting us so badly. So something needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. The last person that we have on our list is Rachel Stanton. Rachel, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for extending public comments after the meeting. I really appreciate that. I wasn't going to speak, but with this opportunity, I'd like to go ahead and make a few comments I haven't heard yet. Many people have already addressed the lead issue, and I think that's, again, since it's outside the scope of this group, so I'm not going to rehash that. One thing I have not heard mentioned that could be done as far as the noise goes is it is within the airports and this governing body's ability to institute muffler requirements for these prop planes that the flight training schools operate. Kevin Ryan had mentioned previously the landing fees as one option. Another thing we can do is require that these planes install mufflers on their engines to reduce noise. That might also have the effect of limiting the traffic because a lot of pilots aren't going to want to spend money to do that. So maybe we'll reduce some of the traffic that way as well. But it could at least help with some of the noise issues. One thing I just do want to say though is I've been following this roundtable for the last couple of years. It has done nothing useful, and I'm really, really disappointed in that. I see no evidence that RMMA has been really trying to actually work with the communities that it's affecting. And the bottom line is RMMA has changed the rules on us. I moved here 6 years ago. I knew there was an airport. I was okay with that. But roughly 3 years ago, all these flight training schools came in. They serve mostly hobbyist pilots who really are not training to become commercial pilots. Okay, that's just a BS argument about a pilot shortage. These are hobbyists with a lot of money. They can afford landing fees if that's really what they want to do. They can afford to put mufflers in. They should not be impacting the rest of us in our community by changing the rules on us. We moved here with a certain set of expectations. RMMA violated a contract. They changed the rules, and now they won't work with the communities they're impacting. It's terrible, and it's no wonder we want them to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your public comments. You're always welcome to send an email to this Community Noise Roundtable. Please also reach out to your jurisdictions, elected officials as well. With that, we're going to continue on with our agenda. If you don't mind just leaving quietly, just so that people online can hear the discussion as well. Thank you.
What are your next steps? What are the next steps?
I don't believe so. I think they're. Okay, we'll look into that. All right, so the next step, we have the remainder of our agenda to deal with today. We will, of course, be discussing the public comments and, looking at our next steps as well for our next agenda. So,
Take your next step.
of course we will. Of course we will. Thank
Don't
you.
feel free to leave. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome. I think it's very important for the opportunity for the community to listen to talk about.
Perfect.
Please, you're more than welcome to stay.
All right. So one of our next steps is making sure that we have a next meeting. So we did a poll, and the next meeting that we decided on was going to be the first Thursday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. Those meeting dates for the remainder of 2023 would be March 2nd, April 6th, May 4th, June 1st, July 6th, August 3rd, September 7th, October 5th, November 2nd, and December 7th of 2023. I'll entertain a motion to approve our meeting dates for the remainder of 2023.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the proposed meeting dates for the remainder of 2023.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no opposed, that passes unanimously. The next thing that we are required to do based upon section 5.1 of our bylaws is to appoint a vice chair. So at this point, I'll entertain any nominations for vice chair.
Nominate John Marriott as vice chair.
John Marriott.
I nominate.
Councilmember Baker, do you have your hand up? Okay. Maxine.
Yeah, I nominate Ashley Stolzman as vice chair.
Second. Second on nominations. Any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, the nominations are closed. So we have two people that have been nominated, John Marriott as well as Ashley Stolzman. We will take a vote. This is a public vote, and you get one vote. All right. So those in favor of John Marriott, please raise your hand. All right. We have two. Any online? It does not look like it. So John Marriott has 2 votes. Those in favor of Ashley Stolzman, please raise your hand. We have 3, 4, 5. Well, vote. So it looks like that we have 6 votes for Ashley Stolzman, 2 votes for John Marriott. So a motion to approve Ashley Stolzman as our vice chair. I need a motion. Motion. Thank you. Motion to approve. Ashley Stoltzman, a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none opposed, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The last thing on our agenda. So for those people in public, just so you all are aware, the community noise roundtable, because we do not have staff support, normally what would happen with a contract that would go through any municipality is that would be dealt with, the choosing between those consultants and kind of the negotiation in order to put to the elected body would happen with that staff. Because we do not have staff, we as this body have to do that on our own. And because we as the body have to do this on our own, we have to go in executive session for that. The next step of that would be that we bring that contract that has been negotiated to the public body to be approved at that point. So at this point, we need a motion for an executive session following this meeting on February 13, 2023. Do we have a motion?
The CNR is
Please.
paying for this, not Jeff Coe.
Please, no more
It
comments.
doesn't apply.
Please, no more comments. I need a motion to approve to go into the executive session following this meeting.
I move that we go into executive session following this meeting for the reasons stated.
Thank you. A second.
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any Thank you.
I was instructed to.
Opposed.
Oh, thank you for that note. We do have those people that weren't able to participate the first time because this conversation has already begun. They cannot participate in the second time. So thank you for that. So we have one opposed. Did both people online approve?
No.
You both opposed?
No. Wait, to go into executive session?
Aye to go into executive session?
I approve going into executive session.
Okay. Councilmember Briggs?
I oppose. I've been gleaning through a lot of the statutes and I don't actually see where this is a requirement even throughout Jefferson counties. I know it's a common practice, but I've yet to find where it's required and mandatory.
Procurement officer online.
So our normal procurement officer, Vera, was not able to make it today. She's out on a medical thing. My understanding from her is that Jefferson County purchasing procedures require that all Jefferson County processes and OPIS costs are done through executive sessions. And so if you want more guidance, we'd have to wait for the county attorney or her to weigh back in, but that's what we've been told.
Okay, great. So by my count, we would need 2/3 of our body present in order to go into executive session. Ben, do we have that 2/3?
I think we had four for the executive session and 2 opposed. Is that correct? I count that right?
And 1 abstain.
One abstained. I would think so. Can we do the vote again?
Yeah, let's re-vote. All those in favor of going to executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
4, 5.
Okay.
And all those opposed? We've 1 no, 2 no's,
Yes.
5.
and all those and abstain. So it does pass with our 2/3. Is that correct?
I said it's 60 and then it doesn't pass. Yeah. There's a question, does the abstain count as, and anyway, as a yes vote?
I think it counts for the quorum presenting, but I got instructed from Jefferson County to abstain, so I'm trying to follow.
What the procurement officer sent us is that if you did not participate in the first meeting, you cannot vote on the consultant, not on the executive session vote, but on the vote for the consultant.
That would be my understanding as well. The only way you could score the consultants is if you went back and had reviewed the presentations they did at the last executive session meeting.
And the conversation,
Yeah.
which I get because it was an executive.
Yes. I don't think that prevents you from voting yes or no on.
It's not a vote on the executive session, it's a vote on one of the consultants.
So just
Well,
point of
well,
clarification.
5 of really 7 is 2/3.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
But one abstains, so.
I wish we could do reports first.
So we need your vote, a yes or a no,
I just want to be clear that I won't be participating in
for
the
sure.
executive session because I was instructed to abstain. And so I'm just a little unclear of my vote to go in if I'm not participating. I'm not trying to be obtuse, I just am not clear. So can the group, does everyone agree that if I'm voting, that you can, I actually agree with what Councilmember Brick said, that I don't think it's required by law. I think you can choose to do this, and it seems like the group wants to, but I am not participating.
I will just say, I had questions about this also. Went back to procurement, checked it out with our procurement, who that it is a requirement. Our chair went back and talked to their attorney, and their attorney agreed that the use of executive session is what is required.
That's correct.
And then
So
the
we
group
checked it
feels,
out.
so the group feels that this, going into this executive session will facilitate us being able to do a Part 150 study.
No, this is, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So under our consultant, we have provided them a RFP, just to make sure I get my letters correct. And part of that was looking at our work plan. On our work plan was a Part 150 study and the guidance towards doing that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Great.
Like-
So I would love a yes or a no vote.
Oh, I was just.
You're the
gonna-
last one to vote.
Sure, I'll vote yes to go in, and I am abstaining from going in. I'm not participating.
Very good. All right, with that, we have the 2/3 of our board to go into executive session. Before we go into the executive session, we have one more item, which is the committee and board member report. So does any board member or committee member have a report? Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you. So this actually, unfortunately, Ms. Naxel was not able to be here today, but this was a conversation that we had. We all received an email that was referenced in public testimony today. We all received an email about problems at a different airport, not this airport, that people made noise complaints, and then they were retaliated against by pilots who apparently were riding around their house. So I talked with, but that's not this airport, that's another neighboring airport. I did some research and saw there was a newspaper article that one of our community activists that we hear from regularly also had that same experience. I talked to Mr. Anslow and that about if that could happen at this airport. It cannot happen at this airport because when you make a noise complaint, your identifying information is not shared. It is not shared with the airline schools. It is not shared with the pilots. It is not shared with anybody. However, with the asterisk that it can be horrible. So apparently another airport has a procedure that that information is public information. But I just wanted to let everyone know that that information is not public information here.
Great, thank you. Any other board member or committee member reports?
Can I?
Councilmember Rose?
Yes,
Yes,
thank
of
you.
course.
I know, it's a little bit awkward here because there's no hand raise button that I can see. Anyway, I just want to let everyone know that per sort of some consensus around me going off and kind of looking at options for developing noise apps, that I'm working on that. I have an initial spreadsheet. I'm going to come back to the council. I may just, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to share that with folks for the next meeting, but I just want to let you know I have been working on that, looking at what our options are for going forward. So.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Most. Anyone else? Yes.
I just, there was the very first commenter talked about putting out each governmental entity putting out a statement that harassment of anyone wasn't appropriate, to pilots, to people making noise complaints, to residents letting us know whether they like or dislike it. And I think it would be really nice if, as a noise roundtable, we put out something together saying, you know, we want to turn the temperature down on this conversation so we can get something done. And that harassment, like we will turn any harassment over to the sheriff's office or something along those lines. Would the group be okay with us drafting a joint letter that we review together to that effect, that we published to the community that just harassment of one another is not appropriate.
Can I make a suggestion that you work with anybody else that would like to draft that letter and bring it back to a future meeting?
Yeah, I just
That'd be
want to
fine.
see that there's sort of agreement that this is an okay thing to do before I spend a bunch of time on that.
So at the last meeting, we approved standards of decorum. And those standards of decorum were not just us, how we talk to each other, but also is how it's conducted in order to turn down some of the volume. I agree with you. And I would agree with doing that. But I think that we do it in a phrase of that we have approved standards of decorum, that we want to be hard on this issue, but we need to decrease the personal attacks. And that's personal attacks, whether that's somebody turning in a noise complaint, but it's also attacks of members of the committee.
So let me just make a quick clarification. So we had two simple rules of decorum for our previous meeting. We did not have those today, but I think that it's gone well so far. Guess I shouldn't say that. But we have that on our next agenda to approve a formal rules of decorum going forward. So is that enough guidance? I saw some head nods that.
I agree with everything Tracy said. I think it's important to broadcast something to the broader community in the paper or something along those lines. And
For sure.
just to everyone, how we're going to talk about this issue. I like the idea of being hard on the issue and, gentle on each other, I guess, is the corollary of that. And
So do you want to put something together?
Yes.
Because I think also including that this airport has confidentiality policy, that information of people who make noise complaints is not shared except in horrible situations.
I hear what you're saying. It's just that people have reported, at least to our share, like pictures of guns being sent to that, like the level of
Needs
that
to
needs to decrease. And so
I
I
agree.
think getting to that to say like, we're not doing this.
I agree. You should see the phone calls I get.
Yeah, we're not doing
Some of the emails. Yes,
So I'll
I
draft
agree.
something. It sounds like it will be reviewed and edited and everything like that, but it wouldn't just be a hands down no.
Right.
Right. So if you'll just give me. Perfect. Thank you. Any other board member reports?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody who came today. This is just an amazing turnout of the community. I've always advocated that people, when they have a complaint about something, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to complain, or you're actually going to do something, show up? And all of you showed up today, talk and discuss your concerns. We do listen, we do hear you, and we do want to take action on this, but please just be advised that, we have to work together. And I'm hoping that the new board is going to reach consensus across the board. I know the previous board, but it hedged considerably. There's a lot of incendiary rhetoric on both sides, back and forth. I would like to see, and I challenge this board to change that, to listen, to be open-minded to each other, and not be exclusionary. In addition, I know we're a noise roundtable, and to some people's disputes, lead shouldn't be part of that. Lead is part and parcel of the conversation we're going to have going forward. We need to get in front of that, and I think we should open up the discussion regarding lead going forward, and not just discuss noise, because realistically, the most fearful creature in the world is a pissed off mother who's afraid of her children's health. I mean, there's nobody can dispute that. Let's get ahead of this issue. Let's listen to the people that are affected by the lead in this community, and let's give them a voice going forward.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to bring that up. I would suggest as a future agenda item, it's really not part of the community noise roundtable, but obviously there's significant interest about it, that we have a guest speaker who's a expert on aviation fuel and the pathway to zero lead aviation fuel for community information, if nothing else. The information is out there. The aviation fuel is on the cusp of being all unleaded very, very soon. And that may, take care of some people's concerns. But I would suggest, even though it's not really what we do, it's not part of what we do, I think Jason brings up, a valid point. Certainly there's community interest in it, that we do engage somebody who is an expert on it, who can speak to us and the community on that issue.
Thank you. Any other board committee member reports? Yes, Councilmember Baker.
I think it would be important to remind the public that this community noise roundtable has no legal standing and no authority whatsoever. We are merely an advisory panel that has been asked to come together, and we cannot do anything.
Yeah, I think the piece that I would object is that we can make recommendations. We can make recommendations to the FAA, we can make recommendations to the airport. So to your point that we don't have the authority to force them to do that, you are correct. But we do have the ability to make recommendations, and we have made recommendations, and I think that we will continue. So I'll speak. Seeing no other hands up. So this last week, the mayor of Broomfield and I, we went to Washington, D.C. on a transportation meeting surrounding this northwest metro area of Denver. We were talking about surface transportation, but the idea of aviation travel did come up in many of our meetings with our congressional reps. We talked to Congressman Joe Neguse about this. He's very informed about this issue. We also teed up a conversation with Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen about this issue as well. This last week, the CDPHE did meet with a toxicologist around lead. We have not heard the results of what that meeting was. And then Broomfield is also asked to have another conversation with CDPHE around lead and noise as well from a public health perspective. Lead being obvious, noise maybe not being so obvious for some people, that is a public health concern, excessive noise. So we have requested that follow-up meeting with them, and we will continue to have that. But I just wanted the rest of the community to know that. We've also had a request to have quarterly evening meetings, evening town halls. We will continue to work to schedule those. And those will be in addition to our meetings that we have coming up for the rest of the year. So with that, seeing no other board or committee reports, the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Community Noise Roundtable for today is adjourned. I'm looking to you all, hoping that we can have a short amount of time for our conversation regarding in executive session, and we will start that at 11:08. Thank you.